Hello and welcome to BBC News. The world's financial markets have reacted with unease following last night's emergency takeover of the troubled Swiss bank Credit Suisse. Shares in Credit Suisse fell by more than 60% this morning after European markets opened, and the value of banking shares across Europe has dropped sharply. Credit Suisse was bought by fellow Swiss bank UBS after a deal brokered by the Swiss government. Here's the chief executive of UBS explaining the rationale behind the deal.
It means we bring back stability and security for Credit Suisse clients, but also that we keep the reputation of the Swiss financial centre high. And finally, it means we're stemming the turmoil in the international financial markets. These three goals are very, very important to us. We're building a big UBS with less risk appetite.
And joining me now in the studio is our business reporter, Jonathan Josephs. So, Jonathan, viewers will have seen and heard about the troubles with Silicon Valley Bank and First Republic, among others, in the US. Now, Credit Suisse. How worried do you think people should be? And I'm going to start with people because they are the people, they're going to be affected by what's happening in the banking system. How worried should people be by what's happening in the banking system at the minute?
Anita, in terms of the general public, I think that there's no reason to panic just yet. What we've seen so far is the rescue of Credit Suisse, which is a bank that has had years of idiosyncratic problems that are unique to itself. And that is why the Swiss authorities intervened over the weekend in this emergency takeover. Quite an extraordinary deal it is that UBS has taken over Credit Suisse like this. In terms of how it might filter through, well, what we're seeing on the financial markets this morning, we're seeing share prices falling in big banks. In London, we're seeing the likes of NatWest, we're seeing HSBC, and some of the others, Prudential, Barclays, all falling significantly. In Europe, we're seeing Deutsche Bank falling. All of this, there is a concern that there may be wider risks in the financial system. It may, in turn, mean that banks are a bit less risky in terms of some of the decisions they make. They may be a bit more reluctant to lend money to people. That is one possible effect that could filter through given the right amount of time. OK, let's take a look at this then purely from the banking perspective. If people think back to 2008, the financial crash, banks were criticised for irresponsible lending, for excessive risk-taking and so forth. Have enough lessons been learned from that and changes instituted to make sure that that sort of crash doesn't happen again? Well, that's the million-dollar question here, because whilst changes were absolutely made across the global financial system as a result of the 2008 crisis, those changes were designed principally to deal with some of the problems we saw there. Every crisis is different. We've also had here the fallout of the coronavirus pandemic and the war in Ukraine, which has pushed inflation up in terms of food and energy prices in particular. So those have gone up. That has caused central banks to increase interest rates, because that's one of the big ways that the tools that they have at their disposal to try and bring inflation down and try and stop those price pressures that we all feel in the shops. And those interest rate increases have happened pretty quickly. As a result, we're seeing some cracks emerging in the banking system. It's not quite clear yet how far and how deep those cracks are, how widespread they are. That is something that we are going to see over the coming days and weeks. The head of the French central bank has this morning been saying that we should expect a volatile few days for banking shares in particular, because investors are trying to digest this. Remember, this deal was done pretty hastily, UBS rescuing Credit Suisse. It was all done pretty quickly over the weekend, and there are lots of details still to be ironed out. I mean, I just draw attention to the CEO of UBS, who said there must still be questions that we have not been able to answer, and I understand that, and I even want to apologise for it. So the bankers themselves are very aware that there are lots of questions that still need to be answered about this. Just very briefly, will there be job losses as a result of UBS taking over Credit Suisse? Presumably there'll be some doubling up or replication of jobs there, backroom jobs, whatever. So will there be some job losses? I think there are around 11,000 employees here in the UK, for example. globally, these two companies have about 125,000 staff, I think it is, and there is absolutely some duplication. And we have heard from UBS saying that it is almost certain there will be some job cuts. Exactly where the axe falls remains to be seen, where globally and which functions. But we do know that UBS is looking to wind down the investment banking arm of Credit Suisse, but keep going its wealth management. So that might give us some clues as to where the axe might fall.
OK, Jonathan, thank you very much. Jonathan Josephs.